Would everyone please stand? I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting, the afternoon session to order. All please be seated. Members, when we took the break, we had just concluded DAT 14, and so we'll pick up this afternoon with CAL 1, Strategic Domestic Air Services, for $3,134,000 in 2018 and $3,134,000 in 2019. Are there any questions? Member for East End.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my first question would be, what's the total revenue to Cayman Airways on the inter-island service?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I thank the member for that question. I'm going to ask the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Fabian Worms, to come.
If you would just state your name and position and for the record.
Fabian Worms, CEO of Cayman Airways. Mr. Chairman, I think the question was, what is the revenue for the inter-island service? That revenue is approximately 5 million CI.
Mr. Chairman, so the government is paying 3 million, just over 3 million out of that 5.
The 5 million is revenue earned from the passenger services. The government output payment would be on top of that.
So it's 5 plus 3, 8 million?
And
so,
yes, sir.
So it costs 8 million to operate the flights between Cayman Brac and Little Cayman on a yearly basis?
Through the chair, it actually costs more than that, sir.
So who pays that?
Well, sometimes that service is funded from other areas of our operation that may be profitable. Other times it goes unfunded.
What is costing all that? Is it our load factor is too low?
Through the chair, let me just use
Or we have too much equipment or
No,
what?
let me use one scenario to demonstrate. I'll break it down to, for instance, the hourly operating cost of one of the twin otters. So when we add everything that goes into making one of those twin otters fly, ownership costs, fuel, the whole 9 yards, you're looking at something in the region of maybe $1,500 per hour. The aircraft only carries 15 passengers. The flight to Little Cayman or Cayman Brac, for instance, is 40 minutes. So if we do 2 rotations, that's 80 minutes, you're now looking at maybe $2,000 in costs that we have to recover from 15 passengers. So that would create an airfare which would be higher than what would be conducive to keeping the islands connected. Hence the reason why, from the very beginning, there's always been a payment from the CIG in the form of the output payment to ensure that that fare is kept reasonable because it bridges the gap.
So where does the cross-subsidization come from?
As an example, last fiscal year and the fiscal year before that, Cayman Airways actually made, Cayman Airways had a surplus, an operating surplus. That is after it receives its output payments, but it means that we took in our own revenue and output payments, which was in excess of our expenses. The area where we had the most success was what we call our core, which was it's the Miami, it's Jamaica, Havana, La Ceiba. These are routes that the airline are not operating for strategic reasons. It's because there's just simply enough demand to warrant the service, and it can be provided in a profitable manner. So the airline, for instance, in its core last year, turned a profit, which actually was the same amount of profit that the entire airline made.
So that was on the last year. What happened with the other years? Did this
Well, Cayman Airways,
subsist during all those years?
through the chair, forgive me, Cayman Airways has a very long-standing history of having a net operating deficit.
Really?
Yes, sir.
No. But it has always been subsidized by government. That net deficit was always put in this budget. But, so you mean there has been accumulated deficits over the years?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there has only been 3 years that Cayman Airways has actually showed a profit. And when you look at it, the history, you will see that the deficit was never funded. So it just continued to be carried forward.
So there's a net loss each year. And we have never, I recall us refinancing Cayman Airways at some stage. And there was a time that we refinanced it. So where is the, who it is we're owing then that we can't pay, that we haven't made good?
The bills of Cayman Airways are up to date. The trading accounts that they have.
Okay.
There's a line item in here that repays a loan that was received before my time as minister. That was a borrowing to pay off debt. I think that's a $5 million line item that we can discuss at that point. So when that money was brought on, there still continued to be a loss at the end of the year. That loss was basically funded out of the accumulated accounts payable. And the biggest one was the Cayman Island Airport Authority.
That's what I was asking. Where is that loss that was never paid off that we talked about, that accumulated loss?
Those are the two areas.
Cayman, where? The Airports Authority and what?
And the loan that was received, that there's a line item in to repay.
So that is still outstanding then, Airports Authority.
You want to elaborate on the trade? Just through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask the CEO to explain, because that's a trading account that has been regularized.
And that would be for landing fees and the likes.
Through the chair, with respect to the CIAA, there are two forms of debt that's owed to them. One is in respect of fees that they charge for their own revenue, landing fees, etc. The other has to do with taxes that were collected, which on their behalf, which was not remitted. With respect to the taxes, where since 2013 we've been on a payment plan with them over 6 years, and we have been current. We're current at that point with that payment plan. I think, Paul, it's maybe a year left? 2 years? Yeah, there's approximately 2 years left in that payment plan.
But what about being current with the current?
We are essentially.
We are essentially current with the...
Essentially in that there may be a delay in the most recent invoices.
Yeah, 36
yes.
days, whatever that is. I couldn't worry too much about that, which is normal business credit lines. So what happened to those where we had to, is it included the airport tax? Is that airport tax included in that you just explained, that debt?
No, that's separate. And we have been working with the CIG as well to bring that amount down.
That's with the government?
Yes.
With the general revenue, isn't it?
That was approximately expenditure. That's the one that's we're paying down over. The 6-year payment plan with respect to taxes includes all the taxes.
Oh, so that's paid, what was it, $14 or something for your airport tax? That's paid directly to them?
To Airports Authority, yes.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, and that's part of that accumulated debt. I want to go back at the...
Member?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Member from East End, could I just check to see if there are others who would have some questions? Let me give someone else a chance at this point. Other questions from members? Okay, I'll allow you to continue.
I just want to go back to the Cayman Brac thing, Mr. Chairman. And despite what my good friend may think and his colleague from up on that end of our country, I am not trying to oppose or dissuade or anything of flights to and from Cayman Brac or the people of Cayman Brac, deprive them of anything. But what I'm seeing is we got two subs. We got two twin otters, and then we use the jet as well to go to Cayman Brac. I would venture to say, and this is going to be a question, I would venture to say that Cayman Brac and Little Cayman has the greatest concentration of airplanes and flights in the world per population. I would venture to say that. Why? Can't we better utilize the small planes or one type of aircraft? Is it that the cost that is costing us so much is because we have so many different aircrafts on that route?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank the member for the question. If we had the ability to right-size Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, I would think the plane of choice would probably be the 30-seater, 32-seater. Right. We don't have that ability because Little Cayman doesn't have an airport that can receive that type of equipment. The largest plane that can go into Little Cayman is the Twin Otter at this point. The expensive part of that route is it's one direction. So as the CEO has explained the hourly costs on the plane, in the mornings, it's probably 80% tourism route, and in the mornings, people are trying to get to the gateway, whether it be Cayman Brac or whether it be Grand Cayman to hub. So one way that plane is flying almost empty, and the other way it's oversubscribed and you're leaving people behind. So when you're leaving people behind, then you're trying to make up and fly as many flights as you can possibly squeeze in to that 3-hour period. But every flight that you fly is losing money because it's one directional. Then the same thing happens in the afternoon, because as they come in, then you're flying full flights over and flying back basically empty. So if as we have in the business plan for the airport authority to upgrade the airport in Little Cayman, and that was a multi-million-dollar project identified in the business case, that is a public document, which we want to get on because the trigger event is there. It's needed. It's not in this budget, but it's certainly in the discussion phases right now. So to answer your question, the reason that we're flying the Twin Otters in there is because that's the largest plane with the most capacity seats that we can put on that airport. Then you go, the next step is it's about half the cost per seat to fly the 32-seater into Cayman Brac as it is to fly into Little Cayman. The hard fact is that as we've added more arrivals, approximately 10,000 in 2 years, 10,000 more arrivals in 2 years, every one of those arrivals costs money because every seat on that plane costs more to operate than we actually take in for it.
But, Mr. Chairman, it appears to me like you have the answers to making it more efficient, which is let's get this airport at Little Cayman built so we can get in over what is 30 or 40 seater, and you jump and you schedule it properly. There is no way then it can cost, well, he said, we added up 8, and then he said cost more, so I figured $10 million per year that costs, and that must be a good business case to spend the money to build that there, because as I recall when I was minister, it was started before my time. It was just a matter of finishing it.
There was a $12 million issue, if I remember correctly, in the business case itself. That was 12 million? Yeah. So it's not funded in this budget because we had to try to balance this budget with all of the other needs. We have an interim solution to move forward, meet demand, and then move toward that capital project.
Well, I wonder if the analysts there could tell us if that business plan showed how much, okay, we say around 12 million. What was it going to in efficiency if we had that? I'm sure Cayman Airways analyst has gone through this, see what it was going to save them versus or in conjunction with what a payment on that $12 million loan would be. Because if we go borrow money for debt, we might as well go borrow $12 million. Cayman Airways might as well go borrow $12 million, go up Little Cayman, build the airport. Or guarantee civil aviation a particular amount, the payment on it, make civil aviation do it. Oh, not civil aviation, what's it?
Cayman Island Airport Authority. Through you, Mr. Chair, if I can remind the member, when we moved forward to start building the redesign and the expansion of Owen Roberts International Airport, we were not allowed to borrow money at that time. So the business case for borrowing more money to do Little Cayman was not an option for us. It also, there has been some preliminary work done on it, as could be afforded. There is an environmental impact assessment that has been identified.
That too again.
So it's, in theory, what we talk about and the practical solution to this, I believe you have supported it and agreed with it. We believe we're moving forward with it, but there are some moving parts with this. And again, if the money had been available in this budget, we would certainly be looking at that option today.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I hope that we can do this, because I'm sick of seeing us lose so much money penny wise and pound foolish. But more importantly, all the last time I went up there that we toured there, Mr. Minister, all I see up there was Nickel Cliff. What kind of impacts do they need on that? Not all Booba Pond, though, because they're too far away from it. Anyway, what's the price on flights, Cayman Brac? I guess they all one price, whether they go on Little Cayman or Cayman Brac and return. Ticket costs I'm talking about.
I'm going to ask the CEO to give those prices. There has just been an increase because it was trying to manage the amount that it had to be in this line item, along with what the actual cost was, and along with the routes between Cayman Brac and Little Cayman.
Just like how I tell you how finance our airport, make a wound, people pay for it. Tell them that you got to put on $20 more a ticket and over the next 10 years, and then you would take it off. Then you would own the airport themselves. It would be theirs.
Through the chair, the one-way price to Cayman Brac is $65, and that's US. And Little Cayman is $15 more for a one-way price of $80. The round trip would therefore be $130 or $160. $130 for Cayman Brac, $160 for Little Cayman. Then on both you would add taxes of $12.50.
No, you don't get no break if you're doing round trip. Or if you're buying a round ticket, you don't get no break. You're just doubling it up on us.
Member for Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, sir. I notice in terms of the strategic domestic air services, the description is provision of air service between Grand Cayman and the Sister Islands. Of the passenger loads that you have here, roughly what percentage would be tourists? Because if that's the case, then the revenues that we would generate from that would pretty much offset, and to some extent. So I'm just curious.
Through the chair, the question was what percentage of the inter-island traffic would be considered tourist traffic. With respect to Little Cayman, probably 80% would be considered tourism. And with respect to Cayman Brac, I would say 20% as an estimate.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, CEO. One of the things I guess just trying to get or to take from this is that, first of all, I mean, just so we're clear, I think that we need to put together a capital plan for Cayman Brac itself. Because if we're running $20 million a year in subsidy in Cayman Brac over 10 years, that's $200 million. And I'm sure for a fraction of the cost, we can spend the right money to properly develop the infrastructure, so at least to reduce the annual subsidy each year. The question is this: in terms of the strategic plan from the tourism standpoint, is there like a plan or something to develop Cayman Brac so at least it becomes where these roads pay for itself? Now, I do understand that the government has a commitment to keep the islands connected, so that's something we have to pay for. But in terms of outside of the connectedness, The last thing that we'd want is, we're subsidizing tourists also. It's one thing to subsidize our residents, is another thing to subsidize tourists. Is there, in essence, a plan in place or something being developed to at least reduce that subsidy on that side?
There is not a development plan per se that you could put your hands on or I could deliver to you.
Remember the question we asked on the difference in the passengers handled? The 30,000, somehow you're carrying 30,000 more people up there than they're processing.
You could supply us with the pages again,
Yeah,
please?
page 8 and 9, the government says it is processing passengers through Cayman Brac and Little Cayman of 50 to 60,000. On page 105, which is the head we're on now, you're saying you're taking between 80 and 90,000 passengers. So there's a $30,000 difference, either number you take, 50 and 80, 60 and 90.
I think I know the answer.
Oh, tell me.
I think the 80,000 refers to one way. So you have to halve it to get the number of passengers.
But you got to process them in, you got to process them out.
Okay, fair, it's fair.
Huh? Well, I know he's not going to 50,000 tourists. The process, everybody counting the people that go through the airport. Of course, they got to process them. You got clear luggage and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to go through immigration, but there got to be some kind of security processing going on. Well, how did he get? Well, on the numbers that he given us, it can't even. You know, got 50,000. But we were doing well before you come in. We were progressing really, really good. Ask Miss Julie. This morning. Yeah, you wasn't here, you know. So I leave it now so you can leave too, and then they'll get everything done. No. I gotta leave him for his charter minister responsibilities. He's dealing with his minister now. But it's I mean, it is. I just need to know if there's a difference in what it is, you know. Could you, Roy?
That's what I think is still a 5,000 out. That's the conclusion I came to earlier.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 80,000 number on page 105 is the number of passengers that they carry, Cayman Airways carry. And the 50,000 number on page 89 are the number of passengers that are processed in Cayman Brac. They're not processed in Little Cayman. Beg your pardon? No, they are processed. This is a fee from government services in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. And they don't have a staff in Little Cayman, but they have a process staff in Cayman Brac. So we are assuming that the 50,000 number is Cayman Brac, and they don't have anything in for Little Cayman as far as a budget item.
All those in favor of CAL1, Strategic Domestic Air Services, $3,134,000 in 2018 and $3,134,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. CAL2, Strategic Tourism Regional and Core Air Services, $14,829,000 in 2018 and $14,829,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I noticed on the Cayman Airways financial statements, that's in the ownership agreement, they have roughly, I think it's 29 million in payables. Now, I see where the Airports Authority have roughly 18 million in receivables. So I'm assuming that a good chunk of the Airports Authority receivable would relate to Cayman Airways. And if that is the case, I'm just curious as to know where the other 11 million payable, what normally would drive that number.
Through the chair, with respect to accounts payable not to CIAA, but what comprises the remainder of the amount, at any given time in our active trading accounts, we're always 30 to 60 days in credit with our payments, and that number, it will amount to a huge number because we're a business that is heavily based on purchasing services from vendors. So we're $90 million a year in expenses. So at any given time, it's not uncommon to have $9 or $10 million in accounts payables. That is just active short term.
That's fair enough. And thank you very much for that, Mr. CEO. And just again on page 52 of the operating statement, I noticed that the other expenses broken down, and I think that was actually quite useful. I noticed that salaries and benefits to staff in terms of annualized is moving. The reduction from the 18-month forecast is roughly $1 million in reduction in staff costs. Is that driven by any? I'm just trying to figure out what is driving the staff costs down by $1 million a year, salaries and staff benefits.
Through the chair, for this upcoming budget period, one of the things that we targeted to reduce was our wage expense. And there are several things that we had to target in the form of expenses in order to produce a balanced budget. Wages is one of our highest expenses, so it had to be included. We're presently in the process of trying to bring our headcount down from about 430 to try and get it down to about 410. We're doing this through attrition. Okay. What you'll find is that the reduction in the wage bill, in the salaries, equates to probably 20 employees at an average salary of $30,000 per year.
Okay. That's right. Thank you very much. And just one last one on the same page, I noticed other, which is roughly 3.4 million, is supposed to be insurance and professional legal fees. Of that, the 3.4 million, roughly, how much of that is insurance?
Through the chair, approximately 1 million.
Okay, so the 2.4 million professional fees, is that a legal and professional fees?
Through the chair, there's a variety of fees that come into this. One major one, which by itself is over $1 million a year, is the subscription for our computerized airline reservation system, which is referred to as the SABRE system. Yep. It's the backbone of the airline's operation. So that in itself occupies in excess of $1 million. Then there's a myriad of other fees associated with doing business.
Okay, that's fine. I was just curious because you had small amounts broken out and this big chunk that I said 3.4 other, that's kind of jumped out. Okay, thank you very much for that.
All those in favor of CAL 2?
No, Mr. Chairman. Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
sorry, I didn't see you indicate to me, sir. Okay, no problem. Please go ahead.
And I don't know what Kenneth Garner did call no guys for before the vote call.
No.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, sir.
I just need to ask, how many VPs does Cayman Airways have?
Through the chair, the executive team comprises 9 individuals. It's the CEO and 8 division heads, one of which is a section head for Cayman Airways Express all unto itself. There's a director of safety. There's a vice president for maintenance and engineering. There's a director of security. There is the chief financial officer and executive vice president, who is also in charge of commercial affairs. There's vice president of airport operations. I think that about sums it up.
Any of those double up?
Double up.
Meaning playing 2 roles as 2 vice president positions.
I would say all of them probably double and triple if you were to really look at what's involved under their portfolios.
No, I'm talking about actual role as a requirement for the industry and one person doing 2 of those.
Through the chair, I would say for the most part, our structure is pretty standard, with the exception that our executive VP of commercial affairs is also our CFO. So traditionally what you would find is you'd have a chief marketing officer or a vice president of sales and marketing, which would be a completely separate executive from the chief financial officer. In our case, we have one executive or senior vice president who heads up both units. So that's a clear double up in terms of how I think the question is being asked.
Yeah, and you should have answered it now from the beginning. Why is it that is the case? The CFO having marketing? Why?
Through the chair, back in 2009, we looked at how the company was structured and organized. We also looked at what naturally went well with where there were synergies in terms of the roles. And we found that the person who was responsible for keeping track of our funding, etc., our financial performance, there was a lot of synergies in terms of the mindset that needed to be had when it came to generating the revenue that's needed to make the company successful as well. So essentially, we did some restructuring at the time. There was a layer of management which was predominantly expatriate that were replaced in 2009 by predominantly or 100% Caymanian members of staff. And in that restructuring, we did combine finance with sales and marketing and referred to it as commercial affairs. The role has since evolved to be executive vice president, commercial affairs, and we'll still put in CFO to make it clear that this executive is also the chief financial officer.
Well, those are 2 major aspects of Cayman Airways that needs to have focus, serious focus on. How can one person be doing that?
Through the chair, there's a structure beneath that individual. So it's not as if it's a flat management structure, but consider it more of a pyramid structure. To give you an example, what's common in the airline business as well is you would have one executive, such as this executive vice president of commercial affairs and finance. Reporting to them, you'd have a director of finance, which is our case, and then you'd also have someone who heads up the sales and marketing unit, or someone who heads up the sales unit and someone who heads up the marketing unit. What's common in the industry on the operational side as well is you'd have a chief operations officer or somebody who is in charge of all of the airline's operations, which should be flight ops, ground ops, and so on. And you would look at it and you would say, well, that's a lot. But then again, there would be a structure beneath that where you would have a chief pilot, you would have a head of maintenance, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I understand the hierarchy system. Whilst I do not have an experience with the industry, the airline industry in it, but certainly in this case, it is obvious that our objective here is to reduce all of this quote-unquote subsidy that the people of this country has to continue to pay into the Cayman Airways to keep it going. And I don't want to get into that and its reasons and its objectives, and its value. But certainly, I would think that marketing is an extremely important role in the life of Cayman Airways. The natural question that we need to ask here is what is happening with the 800? Because there are too many rumors on the street now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 800's flying its routes. Engine has been replaced, and she is flying to Jamaica today. She's on the sched. But I just, through you, Chair, I wanted to, I think I understand the member's concern about the marketing issue, and I want to reassure the member that marketing department has just been strengthened considerably with the hiring and the appointment of a director of marketing for North America, a very, very well-respected industry professional, young Caymanian lady, and I think Cayman Airways is extremely pleased to have her on board now.
Okay. Since when did the 300 start its resume flights? The 800, sorry.
The 800 has been flying for a little over a week now.
Okay. What took so long?
Well, we had to lease an engine, and it's not like engines are just sitting there waiting. What we found is when we looked at the market, what existed in terms of suitable engines for lease, we initially had 3 choices, and those 3 choices quickly became 2, then became 1, then became none, then became 1, then became 2, till eventually we found the right engine at the best possible price. While we were doing that, we're also looking at a shop that is going to repair the engine that's coming off. And we will receive the best economics if we happen to lease the engine from the shop that's going to repair the engine, because then we can tie penalties to a late delivery from the shop, to a reduction in lease rate, because we're doing 2 transactions instead of 1. Usually you will get a better price and so on. What we ended up in the end after about 5 or 6 weeks was sending the engine to the same shop that we leased the engine from. The shop is actually in Europe, it's in Germany. Just imagine the time that it would take to ship the lease engine from Germany to the States onto Cayman. There's a lots of logistical things happening in addition to just trying to make the arrangements. So in some people's view, it might have been long. I think the time that it took was actually reasonable. I don't think we could have done it in a shorter time.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I need to know what caused such catastrophic loss, damage to lose, to have loss like that. And 2, why are we leasing an engine for an aircraft that is not ours?
Through the chair, I would not refer to the damage as catastrophic.
Shut it down.
But there is a definition for catastrophic. Catastrophic generally means that there is some liberation within the engine,
Absolutely.
and particles coming out and so on. This is what you refer to as a contained failure. There were no liberations. The crew experienced high vibration, and they immediately shut the engine down. The damage that's done to the engine, we do not know exactly the full extent of the damage because the engine will have to be completely disassembled. But we do know that the damage is related to the innermost parts of the engine. There are telltale signs to do with what we find in the oil and so on, which gives us a clue as to where there is damage. So it's bearing damage, right? Bearing damage. When you lease an aircraft, the typical operating lease, it's not like it would be, for instance, with a car, where you could rent a car and if the engine goes back, it's not your car, so there's no reason to repair the engine. But when you undertake a typical aircraft operating lease, you take responsibility for all failures. So if something goes wrong with a brake unit or any other part on the airplane, it's yours to fix. That really puts us in a very, very unfortunate situation when it came to this engine. The good news in it is that we have come to an agreement with the leasing company, the owner of the aircraft, that because we have only operated the engine for about 20% of the time that it has on it since it went through its last overhaul, and the engine now essentially needs to be overhauled, we will only pay for 20% of the overhaul and they will pay for 80%. So in essence, yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you to give way to the member for Northside.
Just to the minister, numbers again. You're, on the quantity, you're bringing 170,000 passengers, 340 divided by 2. What percentage of your load factor is local? 50?
Through the chair, on an overall basis, I would say 50% of our passengers are local.
Okay.
And that's an
So
estimate.
Out of those, then we would say that 85,000 were likely to be tourists, out of that 170,000. And your total annual tourist arrival is 400. So we're paying 14.8 million to bring 21% of our tourists to the island. Mr. Chairman, I need to be excused. Okay, see you on Tuesday.
Okay. Member for Bodden Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just something for the listening public, and I think it's important that while we ask these questions, the public needs to be assured that where we stand, at least on this side, is that Cayman Airways does perform a valuable service to the country. I think if there's anything, looking at the employee count now, I would probably say it's moving in the right direction, considering that at one point when Cayman Airways had 2 planes, they had roughly 400 staff. I know I think they operate around 9 planes with roughly around 400 staff, so at least you can see where the staffing is actually moving in the right direction. But I think, naturally, it is one of the larger subsidy items from government, and the question should be probing, but at the end of the day, I think it's important for the public to recognize in terms of the value that Cayman Airways brings to the country. And at the same time, doesn't allow us to be held hostage by any foreign carriers. But this is our job as an oversight body, just to ensure that the public is getting value for money. And I don't want anyone to thinking as if though anyone inside here has no confidence in Cayman Airways or anything like that.
Thank you. All those in favor of CAL2, Strategic Tourism, Regional and Core Air Services for $14,829,000 in 2018 and $14,829,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. TAB1.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
since we have the top executives plus the chairman of Cayman Airways, I'd like to ask if we could do Cayman Airways Limited, the EI1, and then ask for them to be released after that.
EI1. Okay. Let's turn the page to EI1, Cayman Airways Limited, for $5,100,000 in 2018 and $5,100,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Aye.
If there are no questions, I put it to the members. All those in favor of EI1, Cayman Airways Limited, for $5,100,000 in 2018 and $5,100,000 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Please.
Mr. Chairman, I just ask your permission to release
Yes.
the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Fabian Worms, Mr. Paul Tibbetts, and the Chairperson, Mr. Philip Rankin. Thank them for coming down here today. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, sorry. TAB 1 through 5, I mean, the money has remained consistent unless anyone has any questions in terms of operation. I think we can.
I'm happy to take the vote very quickly on these. That if I'm taking that as an indication from the opposition that you have no questions. In which case, I will pose the questions. TAB 1, all those in favor of TAB 1, management of Pedro St. James National Historic Site for $850,000 in 2018 and $850,000 in 2019. TAB 2, management of Queen Elizabeth II Botanic Park for $675,000 in 2018 and $675,000 in 2019. TAB 3, annual Pirates Week festivals and events, $310,000 in 2018 and $310,000 in 2019. TAB 4, management of Cayman Islands Craft Market, $130,000 in 2018 and $130,000 in 2019. And TAB 5, management of Hell Attraction, $35,000 in 2018 and $35,000 in 2019. All standing part of the schedule to the bill. Please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
Mr. Chairman, is that how you're conducting this, sir?
In your absence, sir, there were an indications that TAB 1 through 5, there were no questions. And I said I'll put it to a vote of the entire committee. Pardon?
No,
The suggestion
don't
came
talk
from
about
your
it. If I
side of
want
this
to
table.
participate, I'm here.
I've already taken the vote, sir.
Mr. Chairman, earlier I said that it is a practice here that you take all of them and in a group, and questions can be asked on all of them, and then when those questions are expired, then you take the vote.
Remember, I did ask the question. You were not inside the House. I asked specifically if members I took that as an indication that there were no questions. And I did not want to put it to the floor unless there was an indication there was no questions on the opposition side. I do not want to be accused of stifling the opposition's ability to question. And it was on that basis that I moved forward with it. And as far as I'm
Well, if
concerned,
they did, Mr.
the vote
Chairman,
is taken.
please accept my apologies, but this is on behalf of the Premier, on your behalf, sir.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes,
I
sir.
could, I'd like to thank Patrick Thompson, the Managing Director of Tourism Attraction, for being here. And if he could be released, there's no other subjects here for him
Okay.
to help with.
Sure.
Thank you.
SIH1, Sister Islands Affordable Housing Program, $75,000 in 2018 and $75,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Pardon? Is that your speak? Could you speak into the mic, please? SIH1. There are member for Cayman Brac East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder to the Honorable Minister about the properties for the affordable homes playground, that if at some time that could be turned back over to central government so that we could put the bathrooms there and get electricity back to there, since it's now in the corporation holdings. I'll be most grateful.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. There are no questions. I ask all those in favor of SIH1, Sister Islands Affordable Housing Program, $75,000 in 2018 and $75,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule of the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to reassure the Honourable Minister that her request has been heard. We'd spoke about it before, and it's actually been taken to the board. I'll ask the Deputy Chief Officer at his convenience to brief her on it, and I will also do the same.
Okay, thank you. NGS 1, organize, administer, and execute the Cayman Islands Fishing Tournament, $30,000 in 2018 and $30,000 in 2019. Are there any questions? There are no questions. All those in favor of NGS 1, organize, administer, and execute the Cayman Islands Fishing Tournament, $30,000 in 2018 and $30,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. NGS 3, organization of Batabanu Festival, $30,000 in 2018 and $30,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have one question in respect to this. In respect to Pirates Week, I know we've passed that vote, and by all means, I'm not intending to go back to it. But just as a way of reference to the two, because they both operate on the same principles from a tourism perspective and a carnival atmosphere for the people of the Cayman Islands and the tourists alike. I noticed that there is an increase in the budget for Pirates Week, and based on my calculations, it's an increase from 275,000 to 310. That's an increase of 35,000, which would be actually 12.5% increase. But there's been no increase for Batabanu, who, in my opinion, operates and generates just as much cultural atmosphere as Pirates Week does. So my question is, if one organization gets an increase, why not the other?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask the Chief Officer, but I would prefer that by saying if you look at the two events, I think they're scaled quite differently. But I don't know if that satisfies the member, you would like some.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. I was just interested that one changed and the other didn't change. I know one is a bigger carnival than the other, but things increase for purposes, and I am almost certain that the things that increase one is a grant, and one is operated by government. So maybe I should not have asked the question. I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Member Freestad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, that's not my line of question, and my line of question is very simple. For years, we have contributed to the furtherance of the Batabanu Carnival, but now last year gone too. That's where I'm concerned. What's that? And if you're doing one, why aren't you doing the other? Or is this for both?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the government for a great many years has had a line item and a partnership with Batabanu. The partnership continues to this day, as you see in the budget here for the next 2 years. The organizers of Banu have always delivered a carnival and have grown the carnival and have offered their partnership. The other carnival, which was at a different time last year, was a standalone carnival that the government was not involved in the startup, the vision for it. When the organizers came to government, the Department of Tourism and the ministry looked at it in the same way that we look at other attractions and partnerships for increased arrivals tourism, and looked at the ROI that would be gained by the country for the people that they would attract to come in on a different weekend at a different time than Banu was scheduled. The carnival itself was identified as an activity through the Department of Tourism and their website, but as you can see from this, there's not a line item of funding for it. They had success last year, and they are scheduling to do it again this year.
So what's government position on it?
The government's position is that if organizers, entrepreneurs have ideas that help and work with developing tourism and another niche market or supporting a market that's being developed, the government wants to partner, the government wants to be involved. The government also wants to get a return on who they partner with and how they partner. So there are soft things that can be done, rival bags, some different marketing, the acknowledgement, calendars, those types of things.
But right now, you only view it as a one-off event, which was last year. But if it develops, then I guess government will. And that's all I want to hear.
We just met with the organizers last week again. We've met with Banu recently. So we are certainly engaged with that aspect of a niche market being carnival.
And Mr. Chairman, I want the minister to know I'm not one way or the other. I'm just saying that I understand there's two, and there's some. I think what needs to happen is they all need to sit down and bring this country together. And instead of getting $30,000, you get $60,000 from the government to put on a massive thing in this country. But I don't know if it's egos flying or what is flying, but government cannot, accommodate and appease everybody, and it needs to be developed properly. And if it does, then I certainly would think that government should get involved in that.
Well, this gives you the opportunity to jump twice in May. But
me, I've heard somebody in here call the premier and say that the premier dresses up like mosquito and be out in Middle Street. You see me out there, is that a mosquito?
Are there any further questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to point out, it's not a big deal, but on the quantities, number of tournaments arranged is one for this boat. I think that's an error. I don't think there are any tournaments involving Banu. But I have to echo what my colleague is saying. Not only Banu here, but you have Bracknell. So if the focus is to develop a national carnival, you can't have competing interests because it's going to weaken the effort. So I would encourage sitting everybody down and trying to, if you're going to do it properly, but don't have competing interests, and then, these rivalries that pretty much split people in, yeah.
Just to encourage my colleagues, don't worry, there'll soon be another carnival.
All those in favor of NGS 3, Organization of Banu Festival, for $30,000 in 2018 and $30,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. NGS 7, Management of Small Business Development, $230,000 in 2018, and $230,000 in 2019. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, all those in favor of NGS 7, Management of Small Business Development, for $230,000 in 2018 and $230,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. NGS 26, Miss Cayman Committee, $0 in 2018 and $100,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Simple,
Go ahead, member from Georgetown Central.
Only one question, which is probably the obvious question everybody's asking, is why is it $0 next year? Are we not having it? Well, but this is 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Strand Martin, Chief Officer, Administrative District Administration, Tourism and Transport. The representation received from the Miss Cayman Islands Committee is actually not to have a pageant in 2018, but to have another pageant in 2019.
So let me see if I understand that. So what you're saying is there's going to be no Miss Cayman in 2018?
Mr. Chairman, is there a reason for that?
Deputy Premier, he was asked the question, is there a reason for it?
Right. We again partner with the committee, and the representation that the ministry received was it's usually $50,000 per year. And they were very active this year. I think they had 2 contests. They wanted to combine the 50,000, run through 2018, and participate in 2019. For what reason that was, I can't explain that. I don't know.
Member Freestand.
Mr. Chairman, I hear there's 2 Ds now too. Everything comes in twins in this country. Because of egos and, not 2 Ardens.
Is there a question there, sir?
It's 2 of them whites about the place that we need to curtail. I believe that's the other one in here today, Mr. Chairman. Let's check, see. Mr. Chairman, I was reading someplace that we have 2 of these as well, going to different places. I thought all my life that Miss World, Miss Universe, and we would send, and you ladies try to help me, Miss Cayman to one and the first run-up to the other. I thought that's what we used to do. If somewhere I got that in my head, but I know it both international pageants participants came out of one local pageant. I know that. Pardon me? But they still come out the same thing, but it's 2 different organizers now or something like that? No, I see somewhere in the papers recently that 2 different organizers were doing it. Now I know I don't have good eyesight, but I saw that. But Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if the minister knows anything about that and if that may have been some contributing factor.
I don't know of a contributing factor. I know that we take representation from the committee, and we believe that it's a value to the Cayman Islands for the marketing and the public relations benefit that we get when you see Miss Cayman on the world stage representing the country. And we pay, through the committee, a membership fee for Miss Universe. The Miss World, right, was purchased by an individual, the franchise of it. And the individual took the runner-up, of Miss Cayman to the Miss World. We will still get a benefit from having Miss Cayman on that world stage as well. So we're happy for that.
Mr. Chairman, that is, I can't say that's the least of my concern, because at least one person or two people, two young ladies get that experience and that exposure. What is more important to me is that we have the pageant here, because that exposes more young Caymanian ladies and it builds self-esteem in all of them, and you know, it exposes them to the different aspects of life in this country, really, and that's the one that I'm concerned about when it's not being held.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. So I think the person that went to Miss World, I think it was because of an age issue. I think that the person who had won Miss Cayman, I think may have been a little bit too old to compete in one. So I think another young lady, another fine young lady, actually representing Cayman in that regard. But I remember in the past we have had Miss Cayman that have reigned multi-year, so I really don't think this is really a big issue.
Yeah. I'm going to put it to the vote, please.
Mr. Chairman, just so I understand, though, I mean, the issue with the franchise ownership. So one individual has, or the committee has one, and another individual has the other. I mean, have steps been taken to try and resolve that so that they can all just be, again, working together rather than, or are they working together?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would say to the member that they are working together from the standpoint that the runner-up from the Miss Cayman contest went to Miss World with the blessings of the committee.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't another one of these conflicting relationships.
Mr. Chair, before you go on, based on what I just understood, that still means that one of the pageants will miss representation by the Cayman Islands in the next year. Whether it won't be Miss World because the Miss World Committee is deciding to use the second runner-up. But I understand that the current Miss Cayman has already gone to Miss Universe. So she can't go to Miss Universe again next year. So that means we'll lose the opportunity from a tourism perspective for Miss Uniform's platform. Is this a concern for the group? Because unfortunately, the chief officer has not said the reason why. There has to be a legitimate reason. They didn't just say, I just don't want to do it. They had to give you a reason why they didn't have in the pageant.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the years that I've been the minister responsible and been involved have seen a dwindling contribution from private sector sponsorship. And the burden has fallen on the committee members and help from the ministry to go out and raise more funds or to be subsidized more from government. My belief is that the committee members did not feel that they could raise the amount of money that it was going to take to have a successful pageant next year. And by combining the pageant and having one pageant in 2 years, along with what they believe they can raise from private sector and the excitement that they can make it successful in the second year. But I can also say that what was reported to us was that the attendance at the pageant itself was not what was expected to be, and that was one of their biggest fall off in funding.
Mr. Chair, last question, I promise. So what I'm understanding is that the rationale behind it is combine the funding that was supposed to be allocated in 2018 and add it to 2019, and then they believe they can perform the pageant on the 100,000 plus outside sponsorship. And the reason behind it mainly is because they don't think they can raise the money. That's what I just heard, or maybe I misunderstood that.
Mr. Chairman, you heard part of it right. they did not feel that the participation from the community was as strong as it had been in the past. And they wanted to regroup, look at how they can have the participation back, look at the timing of it, and solicit more private sector partnership along with it, because it started off as a partnership.
I put the question, all those in favor of NGS 26, Miss Cayman Committee, $0 in 2018 and $100,000 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. Turning now to, we're looking at NGS 57, Gardening Projects and Landscaping, $4,000 in 2018 and $4,000 in 2019. Are there any questions? There are no questions. All those in favor of NGS 57, Gardening Projects and Landscaping, $4,000 in 2018 and $4,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. TP12, Tourism Scholarships, $815,000 in 2018 and $815,000 in 2019. Are there any questions? Member for George Bodentown West.
The thing about it is, Mr. Chairman, through you, I really think this is one that the government should consider adding more funds to try to get more Caymanians encouraged in this area. The tourism sector is growing. We have more hotels coming online, and one of the things that still bothers me to this day is the lack of Caymanian management represented in the hotel industry. And I think this being a second pillar for our economy, and at the way things going, I can probably say within the next 5-7 years, it probably will become the number one pillar. I think we should seriously consider putting more money into this project to get more Caymanians within the tourism field in that regard. So I know we can't vote to increase, but I'll ask the government to seriously consider adding more resources to it to get more Caymanians in tourism management.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, I thank the member for those comments. I just take the opportunity to say to him that one of the programs that we're extremely proud of is an initiative that we did with Johnson & Wales, who have quite a few young people in management throughout the hotel sector here in Cayman and have had tremendous success. I will actually ask the Director of Tourism to give you a list of the names of the ones that have come back. We have a program with JW that allows us to basically send our young people there and have 100% scholarship. And how it works is that the $25,000 US dollars, rough numbers, that is a amount, whether from an education scholarship or a tourism scholarship, partners with Johnson & Wales, one of the most recognized hospitality universities in the world, and they offer a student the other part of the $40,000 is needed. In other words, $15,000 scholarship comes from JW. And they offer that in a tiered way that if you have a 3.5 and above, you get a $15,000 scholarship. So at the end of the day, that $40,000 should pay room, board, tuition, books, everything. And you should be able to come back into the market working in Cayman without having any kind of debt service to move ahead in your life. The second tier to that is that if you go 3.0 to 3.5, they give a $10,000 scholarship. And the idea was the incentive to push you to the next level of success there. And again, I can say to you that there are, I think, 4 or 5 Caymanians there now involved with that program, and there are numerous ones scattered throughout the industry, and we continue on a daily basis to recognize this. Week before last in the culinary events here, there were representatives from JW down, meeting, talking, so it's an active program, and the Department of Tourism team works very closely, Tanisha and her team, with young people who come on board to mentor them and try to get them into the next step. But as you well know, the preference for jobs in this country was lawyers, banking, accountants. So it's a monumental shift for us to get the parents satisfied with moving their young people into tourism, and then the hospitality school, UCCI, and opportunities like this have seen young people actually spending time in the industry and realizing that it is a good industry. It is a well-paying job, and there are managers, accountants, engineers, everything, human resources, all of those are needed across the spectrum with the large hotels and the industries we have.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Premier. No, the reason why I asked the question, or suggested it rather, is that for the last 3 years, the annualized cost has been $815,000. Now I recognize that the funds that we vote on here will cover kids that are in the program, and I guess as some come out, some will join in, but the reality of it is the number isn't growing. So what I'm saying is that the industry is growing. We have more hotels coming online. We've got Kipton coming on, so the only way we can increase the Caymanian participation at a management level is to increase the amount. But if the industry is growing and our investment isn't growing to match it, then it means obviously we're creating a deficit. So that's the only reason why I asked for us to consider adding more. Even if we add 5, 10 more students each year than we had the year before, that in itself is progress.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Member from Georgetown Central.
If I can say this, it seems that there would be money available in the next budget
We're
line
not there
item,
yet,
because I know, but just in relevance to what the member from Bontown West said in respect to the amount, because you see that we have some allocations for 2018 of 75,000 for Miss Cayman when we ain't having it. So we have 75,000 available right there. Why not split it up between the 2 years for the tourism scholarship?
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm misunderstanding something.
Well, if you have a question about the next one, we'll ask you to save it until that time, and I put this to the vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Who is it? Go ahead, sir. Member from West Bay.
I just heard what the Minister for Tourism said. My question is this. When these young people go in, get these degrees, or get these qualifications, what guarantee do they have of moving into the workplace? Because you've heard me standing here for the first 2 years and fight for one individual who did everything right, bus tables, did everything, go and get a master's degree in hospitality, apply for jobs left, right, and center, and even for jobs that was below what she had, and even within the tourism department, and not get it. What can be done by the government to guarantee that when these young people come back, they'll have jobs? What can be put in place?
You want a standard response, or you want? Give him a standard response.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I thank the member for the question. I would ask him to give me the name of the person, the young person he's talking about that's having difficulty finding a position, because one of the things we do is take the names and circulate those to the HR departments in all of the different properties and monitor it. And I'm going to ask the director to share with us her experiences from our scholarship program and our hospitality school with the numbers that we've been able to place in the tourism industry through these initiatives, and assure the member from West Bay that we're on the same team when it comes to trying to place young Caymanians in opportunities in the tourism industry.
Rosa Harris, Director of Tourism. Sorry. We have a very good, the Department of Tourism works very closely with the Cayman Islands Tourism Association. when we have students that are returning from college or are job seeking, the CITA has a jobs page on their website. In addition to us understanding what the interest is of the student or person job seeking and making an effort through CETA and available jobs or approaching partners directly to see if there's opportunities or consideration for that student. What I can say is through the hospitality school, we've seen a very good influx of students and interest in the hospitality school program, which also indicates that young people are really seeing tourism as a viable career. And in saying that, it is a very highly competitive marketplace as well. So I understand the question, how can we guarantee private entities have their own HR practices? DOT is an advocate for our students. So the minister mentioned that our team works with the students. We ensure that we review their resumes with them. We share tips on how to tweak their cover letters, their resumes. We go over interview skills and etiquette. We form a support system for them so that they can put forth their best when going up for a position. How that decision is made in private sector is one thing, but usually we have partners who are very good in working with us for placement. As for the previous case, what I can say is that I am familiar with the member's concern and the specific candidate.
Mr. Chairman, do not worry about that previous case. The young lady has given up all hope and gone some. So that case is behind us. That's why I'm looking forward to those coming back home. Mr. Chairman, also going to what the director just said. This is another complaint in the community about trying to get jobs at these hotels about the place. They have this online something you have to do online, and it's a joke. Local people cannot seem to get a job at these hotels, the major chains. They want you to do something online. There are some hotels that if you're not Spanish, they don't want to hire you. You have people locally that are just as qualified. They can hold any job down there, and they're just not giving them a chance. These are the things that we have to address, Mr. Chairman. That's why I was asking what we can do from the government side. I was talking to the minister about what we can do to guarantee these young people who've gone away, studied, and come back and don't have to jump through hoops of fire to get a simple job. And even when they're willing, like the young lady before, to take jobs way below her master's degree.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I thank the member, and his comments are noted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Just an observation. Ms. Harris, sorry. Just roughly in terms of the tourism industry, the hotel, would the department know what percentage of the staff would be Caymanian versus non-Caymanians within the hotel industry? Just roughly, not.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the director has just confirmed that the information is available, that a year ago, Ms. Alman was working on accumulating that different information from the different properties, and she doesn't have it with her, but she's happy to provide it to you.
Thank you. Just one observation, and this is one of the things I think that for us to get Caymanians, more Caymanians in the hospitality industry, we need to recognize or to jump on something that the member from East End said earlier, is dealing with grats. Because when you look at the government tourism accommodation tax and you see how much it's basically calculating off the 13%, it means that the government is looking roughly around at $200 million worth of revenues in hotel accommodation. And most grats running at around 10%. You're talking about a grats pool of $20 million. So we need to make sure that we actually manage that money or make sure that money is going to the people it used to go to. Because I can tell you 20 years ago, when I was in the hotel industry, during high season, I was getting paid $14, $15 an hour, and those things are almost unheard of now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank the member for that comment again. I just want to continue the discussion about tourism jobs. And in my debate, I tried to make the point, we talk about the properties that are here and how we want to encourage more young Caymanians to get involved with that. But we also encourage entrepreneurs to become part of the tour industry, part of the taxi industry, part of the attractions industry. And then we also, if you outline, Cayman Airways is a tourism statutory authority. Airport Authority is driven by tourism arrivals. The Tourism Attraction Board is driven by tourists going through the attractions. The Turtle Farm is driven, and the anchor to the West Bay tourism product that has hundreds of thousands of people that go through it every year. We identified that the payroll for those was over $45 million, and an average 94% Caymanians employed through those statutory authorities. So I take the opportunity to support what the member has said and just expand on how important tourism is as far as providing not only employment, but the middle class of this country when you look at the salaries that are paid in those statutory authorities and recognize, again, to the member's point, that we have to continue to encourage Caymanians to be involved in all aspects because there are many, many different types of tourism jobs. It's just not the front-facing Caymanian at the desk when you come in.
All those in favor of TP 13, Miss Cayman scholarships, $75,000 in 2018 and $75,000.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, TP 12, okay. Sorry. TP 12, tourism scholarships, $815,000 in 2018 and $815,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill. Please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. TP 13, Miss Cayman scholarships, $75,000 in 2018, $75,000 in 2019. Are there any questions? Member for East End.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if the minister wishes to explain why we're not going to have any Miss Cayman in 2018, but we're going to have the scholarship fund of $75,000.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's an obligation to previous winners because the scholarships go on each year.
So how many do we have now on scholarship?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we currently have 3 past winners, Miss Tony Chisholm, Miss Monique Brooks, and the current Miss Cayman, Miss Anika Connolly.
So 25,000 a year. So why isn't 2019 100?
Remember, I think the right answer is that one drops off in 2019. I might be wrong, but I'd leave it to the
How long have we been carrying on this program, is the thing?
So, through you, Mr. Chairman, so all winners have 3 years to take up their scholarship. So by that time, the amount can remain the same over the 2 fiscal years.
But Mr. Chairman, if the children are in school, how will drop off?
Remember,
They got to
I
graduate.
spoke out of turn.
That's what you, yeah, because it's only been 2-3 years since we've been doing it. That's why anyway. Right. But we want 25,000.
TP 13. All those in favor of TP 13, Miss Cayman Islands scholarships for $75,000 in 2018 and $75,000 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. TP 66, Sister Islands Home Repair Assistance, $180,000 in 2018 and $180,000 in 2019. Are there questions? There are no questions. I put the question. All those in favor of TP 66, Sister Islands Home Repair Assistance, for $180,000 in 2018 and $180,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. TP 67, Sports and Cultural Tourism Programs Assistance, $600,000 in 2018 and $600,000 in 2019. Are there any questions? Member from Bodden Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, sir. Roughly, what does that amount represent? It's just a broad. I just need to understand what that amount entails.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this would be a combination of, identify them individually, Flowers Sea Swim, Norseca, Cayman Islands Marathon, NCAA tournament, and what is it? No. Individual activities that attract an ROI to benefit niche markets in tourism, so to speak.
So just to clarify, there must be sort of a tourism focus to the programs.
Put the question. You have a question, member from Georgetown
Do we have
Central?
an outline? Do we have an outline of who gets how much per one of those events? If there's a page you can direct me to look to see it.
All those in favor of TP 67, Sports and Cultural Tourism Programs Assistance, was $600,000 in 2018 and $600,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. The ayes have it. OE 91, Depreciation of Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport Executive Assets, $725,000 in 2018 and $725,000 in 2019. Are there any questions? There are no questions. All those in favor of OE 91, Depreciation of Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport Executive Assets, of $725,000 in 2018 and $725,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. EI 49, Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center Limited, $8,500,000 in 2018 and $9,500,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Member for, I caught the member here. You give way to him? Go ahead, sir.
All I want to know is when will we ever pay off the debt that we owe for the Turtle Center? That's all. Because I've been a MLA now just a few months, but we've been paying for this for quite some time. Is there an end date?
March 2019.
Thank you.
Member for Bodden Town West?
No, well, similar to the question, I remember during the deputy premier's presentation, they were speaking about the loan repayment for Turtle Farm. So if it's March 2019, you said.
Yes.
So if this is, then what is driving the increase then in the 2019? Because I was under the impression that the debt servicing was around $6 million a year.
It's a bullet bond payment in
Okay.
2019.
Okay, all right, thanks.
EI 49, all those in favor of EI 49, Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center Limited for $8,500,000 in 2018 and $9,500,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EI 68, Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport, $545,000 in 2018 and $375,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Member for West
before
Bay.
the member speaks, with your permission,
Yes, sir.
there's no other questions for Turtle Center. So if we could release the CEO, Mr. Tim Adams, Mr. Raymond Hides, and the CFO, Mr. Philip,
That's fine, sir.
and thank them for being here. Thank you.
So, any questions on EI 68?
Yeah,
Member
ju-
for Bodentown West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a breakdown of what that amount represents, roughly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So EI 68 is a sundry capital account across the entire ministry. So 30,000 was going towards the Department of Tourism office reconfigurations. 25,000 was going towards the automatic weather station. And the remainder of the amount was going towards renovations, Toad District admin in Cayman Brac. The government took the commitment in keeping with the Disability Council and the new disability law, and the district administration building required upgrades in terms of being accessible. So this is renovations, ramps and rails, and looking at some possible type of lift system for that building in order to accommodate persons with disabilities.
All those in favor of EI 68, Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport, $545,000 in 2018 and $375,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. EA 143, Cruise Berthing Facility Project, $1,800,000 in 2018 and $1,200,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
I thought there was another one. Oh, we did those. They come out when those guys were here. Yeah.
Member for East End?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I see where this 1.8 is being used for relocation of coral and the likes. Does the DOE have scientists that are going to do this, or the DOE is doing it by themselves?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. So the application to do the proposed trial relocation is into the Department of Environment. They would be the body that actually considers it for approval. This allocation part of it is actually to trial a coral relocation concept in anticipation of doing further coral relocation for the project. So we want to make sure we put an application in to make sure that what we're proposing, the methodology we're proposing, actually works before actually doing large-scale coral relocation, Mr. Chairman.
But that takes a while, doesn't it? For it.
Mr. Chairman, through you, sir, yes, sir, depending on the amount of coral relocation approved and supported by the government, it could take some while.
No. That was wrong. I didn't frame that right. To prove the methods, the proof of the methods takes extremely long time. What is the time frame for building this dock and digging out all that coral?
So, Mr. Chairman, that's why we're proposing to do this in tandem with the procurement process that we're in. So what we're looking at in terms of the trial coral relocation has been done around the world, and it's done in different ways where you just cut individual coral pieces and move them. What we are actually proposing or would like to trial is actually taking up a block of coral of seabed, if not using too scientific a term, a block of it that has coral on it and transporting that to a donor site, as opposed to snipping or cutting individual pieces of coral and moving them. So we have to trial that methodology to ensure that would work, and that when we cut the block and take it, that it doesn't crumble and wouldn't be able to be transported to another donor site first before doing obviously large-scale coral relocation using that methodology.
So, what's the time frame on building this now?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So right now, I think obviously the Deputy Premier and the Premier mentioned in their budget contributions that they will be going out in the first phase of the tender later this month. You'll be familiar, Mr. Chairman, with the terminology of ISOs, invitation to submit online solutions, that was done for the waste management project. So that will be released this month to be returned in January, and those shortlisted applicants would be notified once evaluated in March. In March, once they have been approved, we would send out the ISFT, the invitation to submit final tender. Sound familiar, Mr. Chair? And that is due back in May of 2018, with review and evaluations done in June, starting in June, sent to Central Tenders Committee for approval in August, and the projection is to award contract in August of next year. Obviously, financial close would come after that, and the project would be looked to start pre-construction towards the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. Mr. Chairman, and they projected, depending on the amount of actual coral relocation, as the member suggested, that has to be done, the projection is anywhere from 3 to 4 years in terms of the actual project construction timeline.
Mr. Chairman, that's why I asked that question, because It's going to take a while to relocate that at a very hefty cost. I bet you it's going to be 1/3 of the cost of the piers. Anyway, we will see. Remember these words today. My next question is, the chief officer seems to be rattling off the timelines quite proficiently, should I say. What role does the board play in this?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the member to define which board he's referring to, please.
You mean you didn't know you were in charge Port Authority board?
Thank you for the clarity, Mr. Chairman. The steering group also contains or is made up of the port director as well. So the steering committee is in charge of the project. We update the Port Authority board on a regular basis.
So, Mr. Chairman, am I hearing that the ministry is building this dock?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, as Deputy Premier has just stated, the steering committee is in charge of the procurement of the project.
So who may I access the steering committee, Mr. Chairman? That's a natural question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The project steering committee consists of myself, the port director, Mr. Max Jones, the Director of Public Works, Mr. Peter Ranger, the Chief Project Manager of the Major Projects Office, and Ms. Gina Ebanks-Petrie is also on the steering committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Just one last point. The Senior Project Manager, Mr. Vincent Ayandoli, who has marine construction and marine background, is also on that committee. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman. Is it any wonder that one of the board members on a radio station the other morning said that he has no knowledge of what is going on?
Maybe the board. Maybe the board don't know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's a member of the board.
Yeah, but maybe he don't know. Maybe the board don't know.
Would he not a member of the board? Yeah, but the chairman may know what the board member doesn't necessarily know. Oh yeah,
Mr.
that's
Chairman,
how it works.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Yes.
something to say.
Deputy Premier.
Most you want to speak? I want to speak on it first.
Miss,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, we are here discussing the merits again of this project. And ever since the election, people have been asking me where I stand. Well, I thought the whole world knew that. But this is a good point as any and a good place as any, and I don't want to take undue time, but I shall take enough to say this. And I have said so many times, and I reiterate it. I have two main issues. That is that the people whose business it is to work those cruise ships are not disadvantaged. That's one. I think that the government has been addressing that. Two, that the 7 Mile Beach is not affected by any necessary dredging. The country decided a long time ago that that's where they wanted the cruise piers. There were other options, but everybody fought against that. They don't want a North Sound, they didn't want South Sound. Maybe they plan to put it on the moon, but I think some people don't want it. The fact is that our tourism product, the vast majority of Caymanians that are in the tourism product are in cruise business. The vast majority. Mom and pop operator, small businesses, that's where they're at. we have to do something. It's not an option, but we might want to do something. If anyone believes that we can't lose business, they're making a big mistake. We can. And the longer we prolong this, the worse off it's going to be. And we are not only, and we can say, well, we are only responsible for ourselves, but we do the region some damage. We also do the region some damage when we prolong the way we have over the many, many years now. We have a dock. What does people expect the dock to be? A dive site too? Can't be. We have a dock. Every country has a dock. I don't know about any dive sites in a dock. But we are prolonging because we have met to everybody's wishes. Now we're going to move coral and plant it back somewhere else. Well, when do we have a dock that fits size and fits business for the country? My position is that we try to help the people that are in the business. As I said, I think the government has been moving in that direction, and that 7 Mile Beach is not affected by any necessary dredging that we would have to do there. If they're not going to go in the most sheltered places of the country, then get on with building this dock.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Deputy Premier.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the member from East End raised a question about the board not knowing the port director is here. I just asked him to answer that question for the member as far as the involvement, the presentations, and the timely manner in how they have been kept up to date.
Good afternoon. Clement Reed, Port Director, Port Authority, Cayman Islands. The board is kept abreast of the progress of the project periodically. Whenever they request, the senior project manager will come into the board meeting and do a detailed presentation. The last presentation took place 2 months ago. There was probably about 4 or 5 over the last year.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that is precisely what caused the exodus of the other board members some time ago when they weren't involved in it. And then they had to patch it up by going out and getting people and putting there in a hasty fashion.
When?
During your administration.
Mr. Chairman, the member needed listen. He's not talking to school children up in here, you know.
No, you
and,
neither
and
are you.
I have a record that I will stand by. The
you
cabinet.
asked me when. I said during your administration. I'm not treating you like no school child. I'm just telling you when it was.
Well, you seem to think that you're the only one having any knowledge. But
no, but you seem to think that you're the only one can control.
No, I'm not controlling. I am telling the truth. And you can't come here and too much of that's going on from tourism to everything else in this finance committee where all kinds of statements are made and no facts to back it up. That's the problem this finance committee has. And you think because you're a member and others think so that they can say anything without facts. It don't work that way. Never did and shouldn't have.
Members, please make this.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm talking through you.
Okay, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
you
the
said
board
we
at all times
making speeches, you know.
In my time as Minister of
So
Tourism.
he can make speeches and we can't.
As Minister of Tourism. Listen, how much time you been talking and I haven't said anything?
I'm talking to the chairman, not to you.
Yeah, but you heard what I said, though. You can talk to him. I heard what you said.
What?
Mr. Chairman, I'm making an explanation. Look how long they've been doing it. Mr. Chairman, the board, when I was in charge and when I was minister, at all times understood where we were and knew exactly what the position was. They knew the difficulties we had, and I think other people have found out since the kind of difficulties that we had to go through. So when people come here and talk about boards was changed because they didn't know, that's not true.
Members of the committee, thank you, sir. Members of the committee, what I really would ask, I mean, we're here to look at the vote for 2018, 2019. What transpired 5, 6, 7, whatever time period it was, not of real relevance to us here today, as far as I can see. And so I would ask us to confine our questions to the vote at hand. With this, if we could. Member
Chair.
for Georgetown, Boddentown West.
You keep putting me in Georgetown, Mr.
No, sir.
Chairman. And if you want me to come there and take somebody out, but through you, sir, just from a question standpoint, and just looking at the 1.8 and the coral, it's good to see DOE is involved in the process. I'm just curious in terms of the sign-off from DOE. Will there be a formal sign-off, or I just want to understand the process?
Yeah, he's asking to understand the process.
The process is in terms of, will this get a formal sign-off? I understand it's good that DOE is involved on the committee, so it's when you have all parties together, but will there be a formal sign-off where DOE actually signs off on the core? And the other issue too, I think, to expand on the member for West Bay West is concerning 7 Mile Beach. That has been one of the things that a lot of people have been concerned about in terms of any dredging and the impact that it would have. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, through you, as mentioned earlier, there is an application into the Department of Environment right now for the trial coral relocation. So that we are waiting response on that. Once we move with the government support to do any large-scale coral relocation, that application would have to go to Department of Environment as well. So they would need to be involved. The member had a second question.
Just the potential impact to 7 Mile Beach, because that's the one I'm a little bit more fearful of.
Mr. Chairman, through you, so in 2014 to 2015, we commissioned and completed an environmental impact assessment that said 7 Mile Beach would be unaffected by the proposed cruise berthing facility, given the placement of it and the design being that it is not a solid structure, it is on piles, so water is able to flow through the facility.
Mr. Chair, I've been holding for quite some time.
Georgetown Central.
Thank you. Maybe it may be best for the port director to come back to answer the relevant question about the pose. And it's in reference to the Premier's statement in the plan for the budget policy statement. He referenced to potential for Georgetown to serve as a transshipment port, and certainly welcomed and will pursue it. I have major concerns as the representative for Georgetown Central, and maybe the port director can give me if there's any indications that this administration plans to do so, and if they plan to do so at the said location where we currently deal with our cargo now. And in his definition, based as the port director, give a definition with some sort of visuals, wording of what a transshipment location may look like.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I thank the member for that question. I'll certainly get the port director to answer the direct question. The discussion and the policy that the government had considered was the opportunity now is as 3 different shipping lines run out of Port Everglades, Miami, Palm Beach area to Cayman every week. There's also a continuation and a connection onto Central America, basically Honduras. And the discussion that had taken place about transshipment was seeing how cargo could be offloaded in Grand Cayman and then taken to Honduras in a smaller vessel, and then the vessel returning to Grand Cayman, which, as the member knows, when the president of Honduras visited here, we looked at trade, and one of the issues was the actual connectivity of trade coming out of Central America. And if that was able to be accommodated on a smaller vessel, then the economies of scale would make sense for it. That is the genesis of the transshipment conversation. The Premier, I think, took it one step farther, visionarily looking at, with larger ships coming onto the market and knowing that they're going to either have to not come here as often or find a way to do something with the more containers they bring here, the conversation of transshipment would obviously continue as an opportunity. The member raised a very valid point of what that would mean to the landscape of Georgetown, the movement of it, and rightfully so for his constituents. We're quite happy to have that conversation and quite happy to have the Port Director involved in that conversation so he can understand better what the opportunity is and what the issues are going to be surrounding that opportunity. But it was looked at as a positive for a couple different reasons.
Member for Prospect.
Mr. Chair, I think the Port Director was about to go on further to explain what a transshipment, and forgive me, Mr. Chair, but this is very important to my constituency, and I need the public to understand why I'm concerned, not because I am anti-development, because I understand that it's important for our growth in our economy, but if it's going to happen in the constituency of Georgetown Central, the members of Georgetown Central have to know what to expect, not only just to say it's going to be good for our growth, because from an industrial standpoint, if we were go to a level that was suggested on the larger ships, it would mean much for our environment, more so than the cruise port. It would mean much more for the tourism product that we currently offer in Georgetown Central as it is. It would also have effect on our transport in Georgetown, as well as the beautification plan that the current government has. So hence the reason, my apologies for getting the explanation of what exactly transshipment means for Georgetown Central. And if there's a commitment on a small level, which is possibly sustainable with all those other elements included, that's fine. But on a large scale, Georgetown Central just cannot be the location for it.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. When we talk about transshipment in Georgetown, we're not talking about Kingston Wharves or Panama or Dominican Republic or even Bahamas. We're talking about maybe 50 to 100 containers per week. Those containers would come off the vessel, it would stay on the cargo dock until the other vessel comes to pick it up. So it will not be transported across our streets. So the numbers per week range between 50 to 100 containers per week. It's not a large scale market we're trying to target.
Member for Prospect, you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I have one or two questions as a point of clarification or better understanding. But I preface those comments simply by giving credit to the Honourable Minister for the hard work that he has already committed to and engaged through his ministry to find a reasonable and middle ground way in which to achieve the final result of cruise berthing, which has been on the table and the discussion for the better part of 8, if not more years. Mr. Chairman, through you, the PricewaterhouseCoopers outline business case stated that, in their opinion, the data was insufficient to justify the project of cruise berthing in Hogstye Bay. And they went on to state that the damage to the marine ecosystems, and I quote, more than outweighs the economic benefits derived from cruise berthing. I know the Honourable Minister has made some changes to mitigate against these environmental losses, and my question specifically is, in what ways has the Ministry been able to mitigate or lessen the environmental impact to Hogstye Bay subsequent to the PricewaterhouseCoopers outline business case?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think it's cherry picking the PwC business case because the final version of the PwC case took into account the increased spend and the environmental impact assessment. But I will undertake to provide what we based our decision on, which clearly stated that the economic value outweighed the risk to the environment. When you go one step farther than that, we made a commitment to go forward with the cruise berthing facility, but we took a year basically to review under the headline of the maximum economic benefit to the country with the minimum environmental impact. And we hired the Baird Group again to come back and look to see if the piers themselves could be in deeper water. And as the chief officer made the point, the piers sit above the water and they have pilings underneath that they sit on, so the water flows freely underneath it. The value for money original plan that was requested in the RFP was to design a cruise berthing facility with the lowest cost value for money. The government made the undertaking to look at what we knew would cost more money because it would be in deeper water, but there would be less of an environmental impact, less dredging, and we would not only have the engineering group Baird to do that, but we'd have a peer review done on their research to make sure that we had two firms that agreed with that. And Matt McDermott did that peer review. So that came back that could be moved out into deeper water, that there were environmental savings on it, and the environmental savings then would have to be reviewed by caucus, and a decision would have to be given that the value of the environmental savings was worth it, was of value to the country. The other part of it is that we have to recognize is that this is not only a cruise berthing facility, but this is a cargo port. And whatever we do with the cruise berthing facility, we cannot deny that we have to do something with the cargo port. This is an island. Our foodstuffs come in at the least possible price over the cargo port. The cargo port cannot continue to handle the growing island business that it's seeing with the facility it has there, and again, with what is happening in the shipping world with larger vessels coming here. So that's going to have to be dredged. There's going to have to be an environmental issue, and that's not a point unless some miracle happens that you can get air freight in here cheaper than ocean transportation. So I think that for those reasons, the member from Prospect will be very happy to see the last statements made by the outlined business case by PwC, and also what the value is. But I want to make sure that he clearly understands that a cruise berthing facility is only a vehicle for economic development of the country itself, to get people off the vessel on to Grand Cayman to be distributed through the country in taxis, in tour operators, with tour operators, to attractions, all of these owned and operated by Caymanian entrepreneurs, because I say it again, the threshold for being involved in cruise tourism for a Caymanian is much less than the threshold for trying to find the money to build a bricks and mortar hotel or a major attraction. So if you look at the industry itself, the industry provides growth. It provides opportunity for the high school students that are graduating, the 190 students that just came out of UCCI last week. All of that is driven by economic development that creates opportunity. The cruise berthing facility allows people to spend more money. It allows people to have a better experience. It allows people, as we heard earlier, to come back as stayover visitors. And the challenge that we, in my opinion, as government, have is to balance this opportunity for the country itself and take advantage of it before it goes away.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just...
Just an intervention. It sounds like that third carnival has started.
I wondered about
somewhere
that
along
noise.
there. I don't know how much that sounds
Good.
and stuff.
I have notified the Sarge.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Member for Prospect.
Thank you to the Honourable Minister for that detailed response, which I do appreciate. He stated in his response that the cruise pier is a vehicle for economic development for the Cayman Islands, and I accept that. However, it is a vehicle for economic development that in itself carries its own significant costs. But we wait for the updated OBC, we wait for further details relevant to costs before we jump to any conclusions. The Honourable Minister talked about coral relocation moments ago. Coral relocation is one of the elements of the cruise berthing project that carries separate costs or increases the costs. I wonder if the Honourable Minister can clarify to us. I think it was October 2015, Baird and Associates themselves valued the cost of coral relocation from an initial $8 to $10 million, rising to a maximum of $25 million in order to successfully mitigate against environmental damage. I wonder if the Honourable Minister might be able to clarify whether those costs are still accurate.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I wish I could clarify that or confirm that those costs are accurate. I would think that the range is something that we could feel comfortable with, but I can't say that we have had that costed in the last couple of months, and that's something that we could use to go forward. But I want to assure the member that the model for this is not something that you see. This budget here, which gets this project out of the ground, has $3 million in it. We know that it's a project that's going to be over $100 million. We know that it's a project that if we had to go out and fund it as a government, we would not have the ability to do that. We know that the model that we're working under is a model that has no government guarantee to it. We know that the model that we're working under is a basic licensing agreement that allows for the funds to be in the design, build, finance, maintain model that we're in the market looking for. The model and the money is basically secured and guaranteed because of a throughput of people that will be delivered by the cruise lines. What the country wants is the throughput of the people that come here and inject into the economy their spend for the day. Their spend for the day, the last 2 years ago, survey was $115. The opportunity is St. Martin, before the hurricane, spend was around $190 a day. There is no reason with more attractions and longer time on shore that the spend of the average visitor will not increase by $50 or $60 more per day. Simple math, 2 million people spending $60 more per day in a year is the type of driver that this offers to this country.
Mr. Chair, I just want to know whether there's...
I need to give someone else a chance. The member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add, Mr. Chair, that I think over the past several years we have gone through through the public consultation process, through the consultation with the private sector partners. We've answered, all of the questions, but I still come back to the one point, Mr. Chair, that the question isn't whether we want to build cruise berthing facilities or not. And mine, with the recent passage of the hurricanes in the Eastern Caribbean, we may have bought ourselves another year. But the question is, do we want to remain in cruise tourism? That is a real question at the level that we're at now. And Mr. Chairman, this is a sector of tourism that Caymanians historically have participated in and participate in it in a very full fashion. And I am afraid, and I certainly don't want to be responsible for the numbers dropping below the 1 million range or in that range and displacing the thousands of Caymanians that are involved in cruise tourism through taxis, water sports operators, tour operators, gift shop attendants, the 100 and odd staff at the Turtle Farm, Turtle Center. Mr. Chairman, I think that we have discussed this in detail. We have went through this. The minister has been very patient over the last 3 years and have given everyone every opportunity to participate in the discussions and address and mitigate all of the concerns.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
I'm
Chair.
going to allow one more question, and I'm going to put it to the vote.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
We're
the chairman, if I may, sir,
May I just-
I was accused of making statements here without facts, and I need to respond to that for the record.
Hold on. Well, mine is just to put out there, and I thank the member for Georgetown North for raising what he raised. But but members, through you, sir, members need to also, and the public also need to be reminded that one, this is a very large capital project. Two, it is said that past behavior is indicative of future performance, and the reality of it is we also have to bear in mind the track record of major capital projects that have started that was not finished and has not been finished satisfactory. So I mean, the schools alone is just one example. So the reality of it is, as the minister rightfully said, this is a $100 million project. This is something that this house will be passing on to future generations to pay for. And when I consider that the last project that was built in the Caribbean with regards to the dock was the Falmouth Pier, and we see how that turned out, if anything, that in itself should have given this house pause to make sure that we actually get it right. So at least once we agree on it, but I want to state for the record, cruise tourism as a place to stay in Cayman. Tourism is still the one industry that allows most people to get involved and create the most entrepreneurs. That is a fact. We have more entrepreneurs on the cruise side than we do even on the stayover side. That's a fact. But at the end of the day, we just need to make sure we get it right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I actually have a question.
One question.
Not a statement. We're looking at the Beard report still for guidance, basically. One of the recommendations in that report was to do a risk assessment of the potential for natural disasters, so earthquake, hurricane, volcanic activity, tidal waves, whatever. Has that assessment been completed? And is it now a public document? Something that can be shared?
It has been completed, but it has not been released yet. It's bundled in a report that will be released.
Okay.
Soon.
I'm going to put this to a vote.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, it
Yes,
is in the interest of natural justice in this committee. The member from West Bay Central West has accused me of making false statements in here, and that's not fair to me not to be able to respond to him with my facts. No, well, I want my facts to be recorded here too. I said that during his administration, there was an exodus of members from that board for that same reason. And he said that I was making these statements without facts. Let's hear the facts.
Member from East End, I said earlier that I felt that regurgitating stuff from 5-6 years ago serves no value in this committee in the deliberations presently before us. I would prefer that we leave the past in the past and let us move forward with this and take this
Mr.
vote.
Chairman, I think it's only right that the member be allowed to clear his name, though.
Well, I don't think this is an inquiry or a trial in any
But
way.
Mr.
an
Chairman,
accusation has been made, Mr. Chairman.
that is true, but one member cannot impute improper motives about the other. And he has no prominence in here any more than I do. He has no more prominence than I do, not because he's McKeever, Bush, or Speaker in another setting that he has any more prominence than me. I got elected the same way he did. I am deserving of the same respect that he is deserving of. And this
Chairman, that
position,
member has been talking his head off before we got in finance committee, and you leave him alone, he'll be talking for the next 3 days because that's his
Mr.
habit.
Chairman,
I don't care what paper you bring. I know the facts.
if there are people in here who, for whatever reason, does not want or cannot have or does not have the capability of enlightening themselves, that's not my fault. I ask questions to enlighten myself. Now, Mr. Chairman, in 2011, April the 14th, 2011, when Mr. Bush and his government terminated the GLF contract agreement, stating that it did not demonstrate positive proof that it was able to finance the port expansion project. Days after the termination of GLF, the Port Authority Board directors sought legal advice on the matter from the firm Priceless.
Mr. Chairman?
In their opinion,
Remember getting these facts from,
Yes,
and I would like for a copy of it.
you can get a copy of it.
No,
That's not a big
the
deal.
truth is you should pass it.
No, you'll get it after I read it.
No,
You'll
no.
not know how sure now you know.
No, but I can draw the chair's attention to the fact
Yeah, well, the
that
chair-
he
the
should
chair
have
can
a
get
copy
his
of it.
Members, please, I need you both to ratchet things down, and I don't like where the conversation and discussion is going, sir. I want to bring this matter to a conclusion.
Mr. Chairman, he is the one who's doing it. I just want to read this and finalize it.
You're not going to finalize it because
It
I have
says
an answer?
despite...
Can we have a copy of the document?
Of
for
course you
everybody?
can, sir. Despite Mr. Glidden's recommendation and Priest's advice, the government and Port Authority Board refused to reinstate GLF Royal and instead engaged China Harbor Engineering Company, a Chinese government-owned company, to develop the cruise berth. In the aftermath of that decision, Port Authority Board member Noel March had his appointment terminated by the government, while Chairman Stephan Barad and Deputy Chairman Woodrow Forster both resigned.
Enough now, member, please.
No, but
Enough.
Mr. Chairman, those are the facts.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, the facts
history.
brings other facts. The facts bring other facts. And there was enough shenanigans going on in an effort to slow the project down, so anything was being done, and I wasn't there, and probably the member knows more than he's saying, it seems like.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I'm not sure about all the
There's no more
statements.
questions, please. I'm putting this matter to a vote. We're going to move to bring it to a conclusion.
Mr. Chair,
All
we have a
those in
minister-
favor of EA 143 Cruise Berthing Facility Project for $1.8 million in 2018 and $1.2 million in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EA 144 Public Restrooms for $150,000 in 2018.
Mr. Chairman, can we have a division on that?
Yes, sir, we can have a division. Madam Clerk, please take the division.
Mr. Chairman, you can't have a division now when you have already moved on to another matter on the.
I started to read it, Mr.
Pardon me?
I said I only started to read it.
But you already called it and moved on. You can't have it now. What are we doing? We're destroying every procedure in this parliament and process.
All right, the advice I'm given by those more experienced than me is that I can't call it. I hope that would satisfy
Move on, Mr.
the
Chairman.
member. And let's
We'll get a
move on.
chance to vote later on.
EA 144 Public Restrooms, $150,000 in 2018 and $100,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to ask the minister, the one in East End, where is that?
This is the wreck of the 10 Sales Park that we're working on.
Okay.
The vote for the signage was in an earlier DOT budget, and then the vote for some money's in here, but our next step up there is the pathway that you and I discussed, and we'll get together and move on that.
So what about the building? Because I wondered with it being here in this public restrooms, about the building that, what is, less than 300 square feet for the gift shop and information center.
So our next step is to get the plans for that.
But the plans are already there at Public Works, but they were saying that's 100,000 to do it.
So we have to get smaller plans, which
No,
means it'll be a
you don't need
smaller
smaller
building.
plans. You need smaller eyes and better quantities surveyors.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
But Georgetown member from Georgetown Central, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this point of order, I just want to know what is the protocol in respect to each member's amount of question in any one particular line item. Unfortunately, I was afforded one question in respect to a matter. I was going to support the motion regardless. I mean, the line item regardless, but it was just a matter of information in respect to whether we have a guarantee if those corals are moved that they're going to survive, which I think is a legitimate one that many members of the community would like to know, especially when we're expected to spend so much money. So the reason I bring that up is to find out whether or not I was justified in having a second question.
Oh, I was a minister.
Can you restate the question for me?
The question is simple. Will there be a guarantee if the coral is moved from Georgetown, the heart of Georgetown, for the port, whether there be a guarantee that they will survive? The fear is, the reason I asked the question, if we spend millions of dollars on that and then they don't survive.
Member, we've taken a vote on that issue.
You asked me to repeat the question.
Yeah, okay. That's why I did for clarity. We've taken the vote. We're past that. What is before us are public restrooms.
Okay, well, my point of order.
EA 144.
My point of order before was, what is the amount of questions?
Okay, a number of questions.
Number of questions.
I said at the very outset that there would be no limit, but that of the numbers of questions that a member could ask, but that I would reserve the right to put the limits on if things just took inordinately long to get through.
Thank you, Mrs.
And so I still reserve that right. E8, all those in favor of EA 144, public restrooms, $150,000 in 2018 and $100,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Whew. Members of the committee, that concludes the appropriations to the Minister of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Next up on the agenda will be the...
Mr. Chairman, before we close, I'd just like to thank my team, Ms. Rosa Harris, Anisha Richards, and Kyle McLean from Tourism, Mr. Clement Reed, Port Director, and James Parsons, Nika Webster, Kim McLean, Jonathan Jackson from my ministry, Mr. Albert Anderson, who's been here all day, and Ms. Sheila Thomas, thank you. And certainly a big thank you to the Chief Officer, all the hard work they do. Thank you all very much.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I just always want to thank the minister and his team too. The minister really kept his cool with a lot of the stuff that was going on, and well done to him for that. So I just wanted to say it's appreciated from this side.
Thank you, sir. Members of the committee, next up we'll be examining the appropriations to the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure. But at this time, we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break to allow members to stretch their legs, and we will come back and consider the Minister of Commerce. So we will suspend now for 10 minutes.